the 2026 Budget Technical Correction Part 2, which removes the Secretary of State, who is currently Democrat Elaine Marshall, as an ex officio member of the Local Government Commission and replaces that seat with a member appointed by the Republican-led General Assembly upon the recommendations of the President Pro Temp of the Senate, which is currently Republican Phil Berger of Rockingham County. It would also require the governor's appointee to be a current or former mayor or member of a city governing board and be confirmed by the General Assembly. The appointee would serve a 4-year term. Additionally, the bill would allow the State Bureau of Investigation, that is the SBI, alongside the State Highway Patrol, to opt out of the Department of Administration oversight for purchasing, contracts, acquiring, and maintaining real property. That includes leasing office spaces. However, any acquisitions of real property, purchasing physical land and buildings, would still be required by the Council of State. That is the current process that is already in place. However, the governor showed his disdain for the changes in a press release, even though he signed the legislation. The governor said, "This bill strengthens disaster relief, teacher workforce pipelines, and economic development programs. It supports the Small Business Infrastructure Program and the Division of Community Revitalization, which are working tirelessly to support Western North Carolina recovery. It also enables public schools to start teacher apprenticeships programs as early as this year and supports access to loans for North Carolina teaching fellows. I regret that the General Assembly saw it fit to include some petty provisions that undermine the executive branch and impede the work of government on behalf of North Carolinians." I'll note again that the governor signed the legislation anyway. The new law builds on appointment changes included in the state budget that Stein signed on July the 7th. The budget reduces the governor's appointment authority on several boards and commissions and assigns some appointments to the General Assembly and other Council of State officials within the executive branch of state government. The bill would also create a 15-member North Carolina High School Redesign Commission to examine changes to the state's high school model, including graduation requirements, competency-based education, work-based learning, career credentials, as well as the use of artificial intelligence in career exploration. Although the commission would be housed within the Department of Public Instruction, that is DPI, it would operate completely separately or independently, and the State Board of Education would not receive a seat on this brand new commission. The state superintendent would serve on the commission, while lawmakers and the governor would appoint other members to make up the remaining 14 members of the body, with the commission issuing annual reports through 2031. House Bill 268 also contains several changes that address technical issues or errors, which gets back to the root name of the legislation. Among them, the bill clarifies how directed grants of exactly $1 million are distributed, corrects a drafting error involved in a local issue dealing with Kernersville, and adjusts several budget codes and statutory references. Among the largest items is $10 million worth of non-recurring appropriations for the Economic Development Project Reserve to the Piedmont Triad Charitable Foundation. That is intended to secure PGA Tour Championship Series events in Greensboro. The bill also appropriates some $25 million in non-recurring general fund money to the Department of Commerce to support the 2027 Military World Games in North Carolina and money for a film grant program ongoing in the state. So those are some of the details in House Bill 268, the 2026 Budget Technical Corrections 2, which the governor did sign earlier this week in Raleigh. We now head on over to the House Bill 562. That is the Budget Technical Corrections Modification. That was also signed into law by Governor Stein. In addition to referencing the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, among others, to direct grant funding, a conference report for the bill would redirect both state budget earmarks for the Carolina Lakes Property Owners Association to Harnett County, with the county being able to use those funds for any public purpose. The conference report does not explain why lawmakers decided to redirect the money. As we covered exclusively over at CarolinaJournal.com and here on the Carolina Journal News Hour, we reported back on July the 22nd that lawmakers awarded the Carolina Lakes Property Owners Association $160,000 for emergency service needs and an additional $140,000 for various needs, including shelter replacement, repair, and maintenance. The budget contained 727 earmarks, but does not identify which lawmakers requested each one, including the two for the Carolina Lakes Homeowners Association, which is a lakefront gated community in Harnett County, which includes amenities like private beach access, pickleball courts, RV parks, and a lot of other high-level amenities within that property. Carolina Journal reported exclusively then on July the 27th that members of the association's private Facebook group credited Representative Joe Pike, the Republican from Harnett County, with helping secure the funding. Carolina Journal was able to confirm through multiple state records and several and current former residents that Pike lives in the Carolina Lakes subdivision. That legislation also signed into law by the governor. The governor signed House Bill 834, which is SBOE administrative changes, into law. It would extend several post-election deadlines from 3 business days to 5. Voters would receive additional time to correct missing information on registration forms, provide required information, and fix certain problems with absentee or provisional ballots. The bill would also prevent an absentee or early vote ballot from being counted if the voter died after casting it, but before 11:59 p.m. on the day before the election. Provisions of House Bill 834 would be implemented upon passage, and some of those changes will be relevant for the November election. Finally, the governor signed Senate Bill 445, the Regulatory Reform Act of 2026, into law earlier this week at the governor's mansion. It includes several housing and development provisions aimed at extending housing supplies and limiting some local zoning barriers across North Carolina. The bill would require cities of at least 50,000 residents outside of the state's coastal area to allow at least one accessory dwelling unit, also known as an ADU, on property zoned for single-family homes. These ADUs, sometimes called backyard cottages, garage apartments, or in-law suites, are smaller homes built on the same property as a traditional primary residence. Under this legislation and now law, cities could not require special zoning approval, impose minimum parking requirements, charge higher permitting fees, or limit ADUs to less than 800 square feet. Cities could also not prevent the primary home and the ADU from being rented to separate households on a long-term basis. However, local governments still have some say. They could still impose certain setbacks and placement requirements. The legislation would not override private covenants or apply to historic preservation districts, national historic landmarks, or units without the required water and wastewater connections. These ADU requirements will take effect on January the 15th, 2027, and affected cities would have until July the 1st of next year to adopt local regulations. The bill would also make it easier to convert previously developed commercial, business, or industrial property into single-family, two-family, or multi-family housing, with local governments not being able to limit those developments to those that are less than 60 feet in height. The provision would apply to cities with at least 80,000 residents and counties that have at least 1 million residents. It would not apply to vacant land that has never been developed. The final provision is significantly narrower than the version previously approved by the North Carolina House, which would have applied to cities with at least 50,000 residents and counties with at least 275,000 residents. So a much more narrowly scoped and defined piece of legislation there. The governor said in signing it, North Carolina is growing rapidly and the cost of housing is increasing. We need to build more housing units of all types to drive down rents and mortgages. This bill cuts red tape to help produce more houses and apartments, as well as delivering results for better North Carolinians. It makes it easier for families to install solar panels or battery systems to save on their utility bills. So as I mentioned, a busy couple of hours in the governor's mansion earlier this week, as the governor has now signed 4 additional bills into law, despite the fact that he called one of them petty as it related to limits on his appointment authority across North Carolina. You can read more detail on this over on our website, carolinajournal.com. Look for the story with the headline, Stein signs 4 bills, blasts petty limits on his power. It's now 5:17 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. From the Charlotte Eye, Ear, Nose, and Throat Traffic Center, trust your senses to Senta. Here's a look at your Thursday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick.
It's 22 minutes past the hour. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT, as the summer heat continues and air conditioners run practically 24/7, and energy bills and those costs are on the minds of a lot of folks across North Carolina. A settlement in the Duke Energy Progress rate case that would raise electrical bills about 6.8% over the next 2 years, as opposed to their original request of 18.1%, is still too high, according to North Carolina Attorney General Jeff Jackson. He said in a press release this week that he will not sign the proposed settlement reached last week with the North Carolina public staff and others. Kendall Bowman, North Carolina president of Duke Energy Progress and Duke Energy Carolinas, testified in front of the North Carolina Utilities Commission of its intention to scale back the increase. Duke Energy Progress serves the eastern half of North Carolina, including the Asheville area. Jackson said, quote, Duke brought down their rate increase to 6.8%, but that's still too high for families and still more than the company needs to cover its investments. Being very blunt, the AG said, we are not signing it. The Attorney General also said that Duke Energy Progress made concessions on other parts of its rate filing, including joining Duke Energy Carolinas' separate fast-track process to establish new rules for data centers and other large energy users. Given the strain, he said, that they put on our systems, Jackson has argued for a new separate rate class that will continue to advocate in this new process for rules focused on protecting ratepayers. Additionally, Duke also agreed to have its shareholders contribute $10 million in funds to help customers pay their bills and weatherize their homes to lower energy costs. Jackson also mentioned that he is still fighting Duke Energy Carolinas rate case that would see residential rates increase by about 9.5% over the next 2 years. Duke Energy Carolinas primarily serves the western and central parts of North Carolina, including Charlotte and the Triad, plus portions of South Carolina. He declined to join the settlement, arguing that the reduction from Duke's original proposal did not go far enough. The Attorney General said in a press release, Duke started this case asking families for an 18% increase. We pushed back, and now its filings show 9.5%. That is movement in the right direction, but it is still too high. We are not joining this deal, and we will keep pushing for lower rates. Jackson's office also argued for a lower authorized return on equity, which represents the profit Duke is permitted to earn for its shareholders. Duke originally requested a 10.95% return, with the settlement proposing a 9.8% return. However, the Attorney General is pretty off significantly from that. He is recommending 7.4%, which the Attorney General's office estimated would save customers some $1.37 billion over the next 2 years in which these rate increases would be in effect. Duke said the agreement balances customer affordability with the need to invest in electric grid and power generation systems across the state, while Democrat Governor Josh Stein and Attorney General Jeff Jackson focused on Duke's rate request and the potential cost of data center growth. John Locke Foundation CEO Donald Bryson argued that state energy policy is a primary driver of the proposed increases. During an episode of PBS North Carolina's State Line programs, in which Bryson was a guest, he stated that the rate debate should account for the cost of replacing existing coal plants and complying with the state's carbon reduction policy. Bryson said on the PBS program, "Why doesn't Attorney General Jeff Jackson understand that we passed a carbon law back in 2021 that is making Duke Energy change its resource plans? They have all of these coal power plants all around the state that are financed. They are paid for, and we're saying you have to shut those down. You have to build more stuff." And Duke is saying, well, that's going to cost a lot of money. Duke Energy has joined the Trump administration's Ratepayer Protection Pledge, promising to support measures intended to prevent households and small businesses from paying for power plants and grid infrastructure needed to serve rapidly expanding data centers across the state. Jackson is also asking Duke to formalize commitments as part of a pledge and make them legally binding in front of the North Carolina Utilities Commission. The Utilities Commission will decide whether to approve or reject the proposed Duke Energy Progress settlement. If approved as filed, new rates would begin taking effect on January the 1st, 2027, and the date for Duke Energy Progress and Carolina Energy, the Duke Energy Progress and Duke Energy Carolina plans continue to play out in front of the North Carolina Utilities Commission. So as it stands right now, unless something changes pretty dramatically, a 6.8% for those that are members of a Duke Energy Progress, which in a large part includes mostly the eastern half of North Carolina and the Asheville area. And then Duke Energy's Carolina, most of the western half of the state, including the Charlotte metro area as well, would be looking at a 9.5% increase over that 2-year span of time. This is something that we have seen consistently from Duke Energy over the last couple of years. Every year or two, they go in front of the Utilities Commission and ask for these increases, and we know that it is putting a major strain on families and budgets and businesses across the state of North Carolina. We will keep a close eye on how this continues to play out. You can read more from the Attorney General and keep an eye on the progress by visiting our website, carolinajournal.com. Look for the headline story, Jackson rejects Duke Energy deal, says 6.8% rate hike too high. It's now 5:29 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM WBT. From the Charlotte Eye, Ear, Nose, and Throat Traffic Center, trust your senses to Senta. Here's another look at your Thursday morning commute with Boomer Von Cannon.
All right, Nick.
It's 5:36. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour, Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good Thursday morning to you. U.S. Senator Ted Budd, one of our two senators here in North Carolina, led an unsuccessful effort last week to amend the U.S. Senate's continuing resolution to keep sweeping new federal restrictions on hemp products on track to take effect coming up on November the 12th. Section 2019 of the Senate's continuing resolution temporarily delays the application of those changes by about a month, pushing that to December the 11th of this year. Budd's proposed amendment, set in Amendment 6747, would have struck Section 2019. Had it been agreed upon, Congress would have left the broader November the 12th effective date intact. The proposed amendment was defeated on August the 8th when senators voted 61 to 32 to table it, or essentially move on from it. The 32 of voting bloc opposition to the motion to the table crossed party lines with 21 Republicans and 11 Democrats. So some pretty strong bipartisan support, at least on the losing side of that, in that 61 to 32 vote. Budd had accumulated 14 co-sponsors before the vote, including his fellow colleague and Senator Tom Tillis, Kirsten Gillibrand, John Cornyn, Chuck Grassley, Pete Ricketts, and Mitch McConnell, all for this resolution and amendment over the last couple of months as he has been fighting for it. The fight centered on the federal hemp crackdown that Congress approved in November of 2025. The law changes the federal definition of hemp to account for total THC and excludes final hemp-derived cannabinoid products containing more than 0.4 milligrams of combined total THC and similar toxins per container. These changes were scheduled to take effect 365 days after the law was enacted, which would put us on that November the 12th, 2026 date. Budd made protecting children the centerpiece of his argument, saying on the Senate floor that the availability and marketing of these intoxicating hemp products has created a public safety problem that Congress already voted last year to address. Here is a little bit from Senator Ted Budd on the floor of the United States Senate last week.
You know, every parent in America, they want the same thing. They want to know that their kids are safe. As United States Senators, each of us has a responsibility to the millions of parents that we represent to put the safety and the welfare of American kids first. And that's exactly why just 9 months ago on this very floor, 76 members of this body voted to close the hemp loophole that allowed these dangerous substances to be sold in unregulated retail stores. But since last November, the intoxicating hemp industry has attempted to delay our effort to close this dangerous loophole. I mean, I show you some of the products that you can find in some of these stores. Looks like a familiar brand, but if you look closely, well, sometimes they use the brand name, but how about something like Slizzles? Pretty deceptive. You know, these companies want to continue selling these intoxicating THC substances loosely labeled as hemp products. They want to put them on the shelves of local convenience stores, gas stations, and grocery stores nationwide. And the problem doesn't stop there. The packaging is unmistakably designed to appeal to kids. They use bright colors, they intentionally mimic popular snack food and candy brands like this. But what's most concerning is how easy it is for a child to walk into a convenience store and pick up what looks like their favorite snack or their favorite candy without realizing that they're actually buying an intoxicating substance. You can see what might be a familiar brand here, but it's Stonio. How about that?
That is Senator Ted Budd on the floor of the United States Senate last week, showing some examples of these popular brands like Oreos and Skittles that are well-known name brands across the United States of America, and some of these hemp-derived products that he is calling out as intentionally targeting children and young individuals across the United States. Budd cited North Carolina data showing cannabis consumption coded emergency department visits among minors increasing by 969%, nearly 1,000% increase between 2017 and 2025. In doing so, he characterized the issue as a public health crisis. The North Carolina senator pushes here placed him at odds with the White House. The Associated Press has reported in recent weeks that President Donald Trump personally called Bud as the dispute developed. Bud's spokesman Christian McCullen later told the Associated Press that the two had a, quote, friendly phone call that included the hemp issue and that Bud explained his opposition to the president. McCullen said that Trump did not explicitly ask Bud to withdraw the amendment, as the administration has supported the temporary extension by about a month while pushing a broader framework for hemp and these other products. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Service Administrator Dr. Mehmet Oz also urged senators to reject the proposal put forth by Senator Ted Budd in a public letter, arguing that allowing the broader hemp restrictions to take effect on November the 12th could disrupt recent CMS efforts to extend access to clinically appropriate full-spectrum hemp-derived CBD products for seniors and individuals with disabilities. Bud publicly pushed back on that argument, questioning why preserving medical access to CBD required continued retail availability of these products, taking to social media saying, "Why do unregulated intoxicating edibles need to be available at gas stations for CMS to continue studying hemp-derived pain relief? We should allow these products on the shelf. We should not allow these products on the shelves for one more day when someone can make a decision that will alter their future by buying them." The hemp fight also exposed divisions among Senate Republicans in the United States Senate over whether to allow the restrictions to take effect on schedule or give the administration more time to pursue any alternative regulatory approach. Axios reported that the disagreement spilled into a closed-door Senate Republican lunch in recent weeks, where Bud Ricketts and Senator Tom Cotton, the Republican from Arkansas, argued for allowing the restrictions to take effect as scheduled. During the lunch, which allegedly grew tense, White House legislative affair official James Braid told senators that the administration would not seek another extension beyond the one that is currently contained in the continuing resolution, which would bump the date from November 12th to December the 11th. In an August the 6th letter to Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, 105 organizations said that they supported the HEP language in the continuing resolution and opposed Bud's efforts to remove it. The opponents of Bud's amendment argued that the 30-day delay would give Congress time to regulate the hemp market rather than allowing the broader restrictions to take effect as written. That coalition did include several North Carolina groups sending that letter to Washington, D.C. It included the North Carolina Craft Brewers Guild, North Carolina Cannabis Chamber, the North Carolina Healthy Alternative Association, as well as the North Carolina Hemp Business for Responsible Regulation Group, along with national organizations including the U.S. Hemp Roundtable, National Restaurant Association, and the National Association of Convenience Stores. The groups argued that the additional month could give lawmakers time to pass legislation imposing stronger regulations on the market, including measures aimed at keeping dangerous products away from children, blocking imports of synthetic products from China, and establishing good manufacturing practices. After Bud's amendment was tabled, the Senate passed the underlying continuing resolution in a final vote of 90-6. Bud voted for the final spending package despite losing the hemp fight. The dispute in Washington comes as North Carolina lawmakers remain deadlocked over legislation that would directly incorporate much of the same federal hemp standards into state law. We've been tracking this over the last couple of weeks here across North Carolina. House Bill 328, which is titled Regulate Hemp-Derived Consumables, would prohibit finished hemp-derived consumable products containing more than 0.4 milligrams of total THC per container, along with products containing synthetic or chemically converted cannabis products. The restrictions would remove most THC beverages, gummies, vapes, Delta 8 products, and THCA flower from North Carolina's legal market, which was going to have a start date there of November the 12th. The bill would also make it illegal to sell or deliver hemp-derived consumable products to anyone younger than 21 and prohibit underage possession. The Senate adopted a conference report in a 37-6 vote on July the 2nd, but the House has repeatedly declined to take it up. The agreement was formally returned to the House Rules Committee on July the 30th, where it remained after lawmakers left Raleigh in the last week without taking action. The hesitation came despite a concentrated push from law enforcement groups and Republican lawmakers who argue that the measure is necessary to keep intoxicating products away from children. Hundreds of hemp business owners, employees, and customers are pushed in the opposite direction, arguing that lawmakers should regulate products through age limits, testing, labeling, and packaging requirements rather than effectively removing most of the existing market. House Speaker Destin Hall, the Republican from Caldwell County, said that lawmakers broadly agree that North Carolina's largely unregulated market cannot continue, but remain divided over the solution. He said that he plans to assemble a smaller group of lawmakers to continue working on the issue before the end of the year. House Bill, and here in North Carolina, House Bill 328 would place the 0.4 milligram limit directly into North Carolina law rather than merely relying on the federal definitions of hemp. That means that the state prohibition could remain in place even if Congress delays, rewrites, or ultimately backs away from those federal restrictions. For now, neither the federal delay nor the proposed North Carolina restrictions have reached the finish line, leaving lawmakers wrestling with the questions of whether to prohibit much of the intoxicating hemp market under a strict THC threshold or replace that approach with a broader regulatory system. This is a major fight taking place in Washington, D.C. and here in North Carolina. We will be keeping an eye on both of these different trends and keep you up to date with the details. More coverage over on our website, carolinajournal.com. Check out the story with the headline, Federal Hemp Fight Puts Bud at Center of Debate, also dividing North Carolina legislature. It's now 5:49 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. From the Charlotte Eye, Ear, Nose, and Throat Traffic Center, trust your senses to Senta. Here's another look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thank you, Nick.
Good morning again. It's 5:55. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT. A record-breaking $3.7 million in unpaid wages have been recovered by the North Carolina Department of Labor for workers in 89 of the state's 100 counties. North Carolina Labor Commissioner made the announcement Tuesday morning, noting that the recovery was for the state's fiscal year 2026 and a significant increase from last year's announcement of more than $2.5 million in unpaid wages. The Labor Commissioner said in a press release, "Today is a win for workers. It is a win for people who show up every day, put in the hours, and do the job. When a worker comes forward with a concern, they should know that the North Carolina Department of Labor is committed to helping them. Most businesses want to comply with the law, and our goal is always to work with them towards voluntary compliance." The recovered wages come from more than 2,100 complaints, investigated by the North Carolina Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Bureau. It enforces the North Carolina Wage and Hour Act, which ensures that employees receive the compensation they're legally owed using compliance assistance and enforcement actions. Wake County had 332 complaints that totaled more than $722,000, the most in recovered wages, while Bladen County had only one complaint and the least recovered at just $133. The cases involve a wide range of violations, including unpaid final paychecks, withheld commissions, overtime shortfalls, and improper deductions across industries such as construction, retail, hospitality, healthcare, manufacturing, transportation, and agriculture. This is the largest dollar amount in terms of wage recovery over the last decade, $3.7 million. You can read more on this. We've got some charts and graphs. You can check out how much was recovered in your county. Those details over on our website, carolinajournal.com. The headline story, NCDOL recovers record $3.7 million in unpaid wages for NC workers. That's going to do it for a Thursday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on Charlotte's FM News Talk, 107.9 FM, WBT.